Imagine being a broke aristocrat with a massive inheritance waiting, if you can stay alive. Marshal King was drowning in debt. His wealthy uncle, Lord Southerton, was on his deathbed, but Marshal didn't have a penny. Desperate, he accepted an invitation from his estranged cousin, Everard, who had returned from Brazil to a massive English estate. Everard welcomed him warmly, but his hostile wife whispered that Marshal was a fool to stay. Everard brushed it off and dragged Marshal to see his pride and joy, a private menagerie. In a stone vault lay a Brazilian cat. It wasn't a house pet, it was an 11-foot-long black monster. Everard warned that it had never tasted living blood, but once it did, it would become a demon. During his visit, Marshal noticed Everard anxiously receiving telegrams every few hours. On his last night, Marshal asked his cousin for a loan. Everard smiled, promising to help, and suggested a midnight visit to the cat. In the dark vault, Everard handed Marshal a lantern, stepped out for supper, and locked the door. Then a horrific sound echoed. Everard was winding the winch handle. He was letting the monster loose. Marshal screamed, but the bars retracted. Left in the dark, he swung himself onto the iron roof of the cage, squeezing against the ceiling. The cat leaped, its claws ripping his knee, but it missed and crashed down. For 2 hours, Marshal listened to the velvety pads pacing below. At dawn, the cat coiled for a lethal spring. Marshal threw his coat over the beast's head, dropped down, and dragged the cage bars shut. But as he squeezed through the gap, the cat tore off the coat and lunged. A massive paw ripped the calf from Marshal's leg. Bleeding out, he dragged himself behind the bars and fainted. Hours later, the door clicked. Everard peered in, expecting a corpse. Seeing Marshal down, he stepped inside, calling, "Good old Tommy!" But the cat had tasted blood. It was a frenzied fiend. It turned on its master, tearing Everard to pieces. Marshal survived, crippled for life. Weeks later, his lawyer arrived with shocking news. Lord Southerton had died the exact night of the attack. Marshal was now fabulously wealthy. The final chill? Everard had bribed the Lord's valet for hourly updates. Everard was next in line. If the cat had eaten Marshal, Everard would have inherited everything.